I've seen the same story play out over and over. You spot a massive 49-inch curved screen on a deal site, think you've found the ultimate upgrade, only to end up with a display that looks great in the box but turns out to be a headache on the desk. Cheap ultra-wide panels promise immersive gaming and productivity, but many of them suffer from ghosting, limited brightness, or a wobble that makes the whole thing feel cheap after a week of use. So the question I kept asking myself while researching the Samsung Odyssey Neo G9 was, does this monster actually deliver a smarter, more reliable experience, or is it just another pricey vanity item? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent a few days watching unboxing videos, digging through forum threads about mini LED performance, and comparing real-world HDR screenshots that owners posted. What stood out was how often the conversation turned back to two things: how the monitor handles fast-paced games without the blur you see on cheaper panels, and whether the sheer size translates into usable workspace or just a massive wall that eats up your room. Let's start with the practical setup. The Neo G9 is a 49-inch, 32:9 curved screen that essentially replaces two 27-inch monitors in one. Because it's a curved panel, you're forced to sit relatively close, around 2 feet away, to keep the whole field of view comfortable. In a typical gaming room, that means you need a desk that's at least 36 inches deep, and you'll probably have to adjust your chair height to avoid neck strain. The stand is surprisingly sturdy, with tilt, swivel, and height adjustments that let you line up the curve with your eye level, but you'll need to lock it firmly if you have a heavy graphics card that pushes the monitor forward during intense moments. When it comes to everyday use, the mini LED backlight really makes a difference. Most budget ultrawides are stuck at 300 to 400 nits, which is fine in a dark room but looks washed out under ambient light. The Odyssey Neo G9 pushes HDR brightness up toward the HDR 2000 label, giving you bright highlights that actually pop in bright rooms. I tried it with a recent open-world RPG, and the sunlit landscapes retained detail without the blooming you see on standard LED panels. That same brightness helped during a video conference my webcam feed showed me in crisp detail even when my office lights were on. The 240 Hz refresh rate and 1 millisecond response time are the headline numbers that attract gamers, but the real test is how they feel when you're actually playing. I paired the monitor with an RTX 3080 and enabled NVIDIA G-Sync. The game stayed locked to the monitor's refresh without stutter, even during frantic firefights. AMD FreeSync Premium Pro works just as well if you're on a Radeon card, so you're not locked into one ecosystem. The combination of high refresh and the deep curve means you can keep your eyes on the action without the tunnel vision you sometimes get on flat ultra-wides. However, if you're only a casual player who rarely exceeds 60 frames per second, you might not notice the difference enough to justify the price tag. Productivity is another arena where the Neo G9 shines. Because the screen is essentially two 1440p panels side by side, you can run separate windows for code, chat, and a browser without juggling a multi-monitor stand. I set up a split-screen workspace with Visual Studio, Slack, and a reference document, and the curved edge kept my peripheral vision from drifting into the background. The only downside is that the sheer width can be overwhelming if you're not used to such a spread. Some people end up spending more time moving the mouse across the screen than actually working. If you're comfortable with keyboard shortcuts and window snapping, the monitor becomes a massive productivity booster, but for anyone who prefers a more compact setup, the curve may feel like a wall you constantly bump into. Now, let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. The Neo G9 runs on a fairly power-hungry mini LED array, so you'll see a noticeable increase in your electricity bill compared to a standard 1080p panel. It also generates heat. The back of the unit gets warm after a few hours of 4K gaming at max settings. Samsung includes a built-in fan that kicks in quietly, but the warm surface can be uncomfortable if you lean forward for long periods. Another practical concern is the lack of USB-C video input. If you were hoping to connect a modern laptop with a single cable, you'll need a separate adapter, which adds clutter. Who should buy this monitor? If you are a serious gamer who already owns a high-end GPU and you spend many hours a week in fast-paced shooters, racing sims, or competitive esports titles, the combination of G-Sync, FreeSync, 240Hz, and the mini LED HDR performance is a genuine advantage. It also makes sense for creators who need a massive, color-accurate workspace for video editing or music production, as the wide color gamut and high brightness let you see fine gradations that smaller panels hide. Lastly, anyone who loves the future-proof vibe of a 49-inch curved